let's move forward and let's talk about a fight that was just announced by ESPN and their sources and everything like that. But we're still waiting on the initial press conference as well too. But Shakur Stevenson will now face off against Edwin De Los Santos on November 16th in Vegas, and that's going to actually be F1 week as well too. So it's going to be huge. The events in Vegas, but I think this fight might get a little overshadowed or overlooked because that event is really a standalone event, and you bringing this boxing match is almost like an appetizer for people that are just going to be walking around the strip and things like that. Because how are you walking on the strip if you have an event that literally has made new roads on the busiest part of the little city of Las Vegas? So when we get down to the fight, Edwin De Los Santos, you see that man right there? That's Rayo. Rayo was seen as one of the top prospects for PBC. Whoop, 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 whoop. And we walked into that fight night that night on pay-per-view, and he got absolutely sparked. He got knocked the F out. Okay. And Edwin De Los Santos redeemed himself because he was seen as another body going into that fight, but he was always a top tier lightweight. So him going into the fight and beating Rayo the way he did, it showed that he still got it. And he's been able to be very successful in his last few fights where he's been really good. And in his last fight against Ardornio, a guy who was highly rated, highly favored, he absolutely shut him out. He dominated this guy. He really, really put on an absolute clinic in that fight. And you just get really excited about what you can see in Edwin De Los Santos. And you know that Edwin is possibly the biggest threat to Shakur Stevenson because we haven't really had any threats to Shakur. You thought that Jamel Herring was going to be good against him. He was absolutely he was absolutely, I wouldn't say awful, but he wasn't good. Okay. And he turned into an elderly man in that fight. You know, he went from being 30 some odd years old to about 60 by the time we got to the end of that fight. But I kind of feel like he gave that fight away to his little buddy because they were just so close before they had that fight. And then they had the fight, all of a sudden, they not as close anymore. You know what I mean? But it's all good. Jamel took it in a humbling status, and Shakur was very, appreciative of him handing his belt over. Now, when he fought Oscar Valdez, that was huge because Oscar Valdez was seen as a 50-50 fight, even though we knew that it wasn't, but still, they went into the fight. He did a good job of getting the house somewhat packed in Las Vegas. It was a hyped up fight, and he wound up winning the fight. It was really good for Shakur. And then Shakur, he takes a couple more fights on. He misses weight. That was pretty tremendous right there. He misses weight, but he was able to win the fight. And then he fought in Jersey again against a Japanese man who was an undefeated fighter, number one contender or whatever. But it was a real good showcase for Shakur. It showed some power for Shakur as well, too. So Shakur's last fight, he's coming off of a knockout. And then you have De Los Santos, he's coming off of a shutout. So this really does set up for a super fight in the smaller venue senses of the word. You know what I mean? But they're not going to have it at a small venue. They're going to have it possibly, I think, at the MGM Grand Garden Arena or T-Mobile or over at the T-Mobile Arena. Really, the fight should be, y'all going to be like, nah. But with the way this week sets up, the fight would be better off at the Virgin because you wouldn't be so congested to get to the fight, get in and out of the fight. But I'm not the promoter, so they're going to do what they want. But all in all, I truly do feel that Edwin De Los Santos is going to give Shakur problems because I feel Shakur is a little distracted. He's very worried about what Twitter's talking about. He's very worried about who he's going to say who's ducking him this week. He's very worried about, judging fights and misjudging fights of people he doesn't like. You know what I mean? It's just he's a little distracted. You know what I mean? And I feel like he's doing a lot so he can try to get to the levels of the Devin Haney's of the Tank Davises, of the Ryan Garcias, the Teofimo Lopez's, but you have to be kind of likable too. And he's really not passing the test that well, because you can't be entitled to anything. And that's exactly what's wrong with Shakur right now, is that he feels entitled to every belt. He feels entitled to every matchup. And if you don't, do his demands or something like that, you're a duck. That's not a good way to push your career, because I'm going to say it again, and I say it every time these guys start talking about people are ducking me. Nobody is scared of anybody in boxing. If you ever go into a boxing gym, if the star guy walks in there, there's 10 people that want to spar him. Nobody's scared, okay? It has to make sense. Money got to make sense. Dollars got to make sense, because literally you're handing Shakur a W when you fight him and you're not one of these elite guys, or if you're not a championship type fighter. So you're trying to keep yourself relevant, because Shakur is the type of guy that can put the beating on you to the point to where you become irrelevant and that you can't book no more fights. And that's why you try to avoid it, or you try to get the best payday you possibly can to fight a guy like that. And if it's a close fight, you're most likely going to lose. You know what I mean? So, it's up to the guys like Edwin De Los Santos and all the other, I'm going to just say it, Hispanic guys and European guys who will just take whatever they handing you to possibly put Shakur out. And that's why I said that Edwin De Los Santos probably has the best opportunity against Shakur than anybody he's ever fought, because he's already faced adversity, he's already lost a fight, and he's already cleaned the clock of another highly touted prospect. I know Rayo isn't as good as Shakur, but Rayo could give Shakur some issues because he has the power that can give him issues. So I think that Edwin De Los Santos, one more time, should be more than game for this fight, but it is going to be the toughest fight of his life, but it looks like it could be Shakur's toughest fight of his career. You know what I mean? So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it shakes out. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take our first break of the show. And when I get back, we're going to jump into the Blue Crew Daily and the MLB Friday Night. So you guys stay tuned. This is the Premier Sports Betting Show, the Primetime Angles with the one and only Pop Dibiase, the Primetime Capper.
Good News Only Racing Club, led by the legendary Doug O'Neill, the trainer of 2 Kentucky Derby winners, and I'll have another, and Nyquist. Also trained 2-time Breeders' Cup champ,